Nate Silvers and these Saliza people just bites into this glorious show. AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas.
When Greg Gutfeld sets his sights on AOC, it's not just commentary, it's comedy with a razor's edge. Armed with wit sharper than any congressional retort, he tears through the buzzwords, exposes the contradictions, and leaves the Twitter-fueled sound bites in flames. It's not a debate, it's a demolition. As AOC spins her usual ideological fairy tales, Greg brings the cold, hard punchline of reality. And the best part, he makes the truth hilarious, one savage sentence at a time.
Where did she grow up again? Westchester?
Westchester.
She represents Queens. And she wears plaid, and then she has little ski things with like a 60-pound backpack, like she does that. I have never seen, and she showcases her whole life on social media. You can never see her in private. Everything is on social media.
Greg Gutfeld has always been a connoisseur of the absurd, a collector of contradictions, and a poet of political roasts. So when he sets his satirical sights on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it's not just commentary, it's a full-blown roast, seasoned with sarcasm, dry wit, and intellectual demolition. Because AOC doesn't just hand over material, she practically mails it to his desk with a glittery bow and a note that says, "Use this on national TV."
AOC was on 60 Minutes last night. Quite a feat for a newcomer. Must be all her great new ideas.
People are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
What an expression. Now, the real story isn't AOC's very old ideas. It's the media's gushy view of her. Even with her old ideas, she gets on 60 Minutes. The past is called the future, and you better love it.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Greg begins his assault the way a chef starts a gourmet meal, by savoring every strange ingredient she brings to the table. And with AOC, the pantry is always full. A self-declared champion of the working class who spends more time live-streaming her skincare routine than drafting serious legislation. AOC embodies the political influencer hybrid between a TED Talk and a TikTok trend no one asked for.
Status.
Why is it, Greg, that you can't challenge someone to a debate on the ideas without being accused of being a jerk? Like, I don't think Ben Shapiro has ever catcalled in his life.
Well, the thing is, what if a woman had challenged her to a debate? So she's actually being the sexist.
I think Candace Owens did.
Oh, really?
Now
there you go.
She has, like,
because
doubled the money.
So to answer your other question, she had to cloak her weak ideas in the armor of a smear.
Gutfeld doesn't even need to exaggerate. Her career is already a walking contradiction. He starts with her economics degree, which she wields like Thor's hammer in every debate, even though it appears to have been printed on the back of a rewards card. Gutfeld marvels at how someone who graduated in economics seems fundamentally confused about how supply and demand work.
She has never introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life. The reason why she gets along with Bernie is because she's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983.
Her Green New Deal reads like a 10th grader's extra credit project, rewritten during a yoga retreat. It promises utopia, funds it with unicorn dust, and expects no one to notice. The math is shakier than her Instagram filter in bad lighting. Gutfeld relishes the disconnect between AOC's rhetoric and reality. She rails against capitalism while wearing clothes that cost more than a month's rent in the Bronx. She talks about injustice while flying first class to climate conferences. Greg peels back the image and reveals the real performance, a curated spectacle designed for social media, not for actual governing. To him, she's the political equivalent of a decorative candle, bright, fashionable, and utterly useless in a power outage. Then comes the all-you-can-roast buffet of her social media antics. Gutfeld has a field day dissecting her obsession with performative outrage. AOC doesn't just disagree with people, SAI accuses them of moral crimes. She doesn't argue a point, she gasps theatrically, clutches metaphorical pearls, and cries injustice because someone used a word she didn't pre-up.
Right? she makes movies, she goes to galas, she sits for glossy butt-kissing interviews in GQ and other women's mags. Once you get over the fact that you're hollow inside, it's not a bad life.
All right, Dana?
Well, I think that I read a little bit of the New York Times review.
Gutfeld paints a picture of a woman who enters every debate like it's the season finale of a reality show. Every disagreement is a trauma. Every policy criticism is oppression. Every lost vote is a Greek tragedy rewritten for Instagram reels. Gutfeld then swivels to her famous flair for being offended. She's a master at finding microaggressions in microwaved soup. But the real roast begins when Greg exposes her solutions, or more precisely, her stunning lack thereof. AOC proposes the boldest, most radical overhauls of modern society and then forgets to bring the calculator. Her plans promise everything, solve nothing, and are as grounded in logic as a hoverboard on a trampoline. Gutfeld likens her political strategy to ordering the most expensive meal on the menu, insisting everyone should pay for it, and storming out when the check arrives.
Crossed her wrists behind her back, again in the faux handcuffed position. It's as tall a tale as AOC nearly being killed on January 6th. This is a person who never met a situation she couldn't make about her. She really is the Amber Heard of DC politics. I'm surprised she didn't claim she was nearly killed on 9/11, or during the Tet Offensive, or the Battle of Bunker Hill.
He targets her Green New Deal like it's the blooper reel of environmental policy. High-speed trains replacing air travel. Cows getting climate citations for farting. Universal income for those unwilling to work. Gutfeld doesn't even need a punchline, he just repeats the premise and lets the audience laugh. It's a plan so devoid of real-world applicability that even kindergartners playing pretend government might think twice. According to Greg, the Green New Deal has all the ambition of the moon landing but with the planning of a group text gone wrong. Greg marvels at how someone can become part of the government and still claim to be fighting the system like she's camping outside of it in a tent with a protest sign. You're in Congress, he reminds us. You are the system. But to AOC, every critique of her ideas is a symptom of systemic evil, not a legitimate challenge. She doesn't want to win debates, wants to redefine the dictionary so she never loses one.
She gets on 60 Minutes. The past is called the future, and you better love it. Take AOC's delightful dancing video from last week. The media created a fake story that conservatives attacked her over this delightful trifle. Not really. In fact, the only stories written about the dance were by liberals using it to falsely smear the right. So the press creates a shield around.
Then comes the ego. Greg describes it with surgical flair, their brand of confidence that can only come from someone who believes their hot takes are gospel and their gaffes are growth opportunities. AOC tweets with the righteousness of a prophet and deletes with the subtlety of a magician. Her contradictions are explained away as evolving thought, which is political code for don't look too hard. Gutfeld grins as he lists the number of times she's backtracked, reshaped, or redefined something she said as if words were like balloons and could be twisted into anything except accountability. She posts carefully staged selfies with captions about systemic inequality. She sells merchandise bearing slogans that sound deep until you realize they were probably brainstormed during a brunch meeting with marketing interns. Gutfeld calls it activist cosplay, a kind of politics where appearance trumps substance and clout is currency.
Media would obey. Let's watch the tape. You know, she'd be a great mime. Like the Latina version of Marcel Marceau.
He points out how she frames every issue as good versus evil with herself cast as the protagonist. Of course. Every vote becomes a stand for justice. Every critique becomes oppression. Every mild policy disagreement becomes a flashpoint in the ongoing battle for civilization. Greg compares her political approach to a soap opera starring herself as the heroine, capitalism as the villain, and every critic as a walking threat to democracy. It's exhausting, it's theatrical, and it's catnip for satire. Gutfeld also doesn't let her off the hook for playing the underdog card. While sitting on one of the most influential platforms in the country, she claims to be fighting power while simultaneously trending every Tuesday. Gutfeld wraps it with a flourish, calling AOC the ultimate creation of a culture that confuses Instagram engagement with insight. She's not dumb, he admits, dangerously convinced that her worldview is not only correct but morally superior. And that, he says, is the most dangerous thing a politician can believe. that their ideology is immune to facts simply because it's popular.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've done Alexandria every day for the last 6 months. No, I mean, no, but it's true. But so is, I mean, the thing is, she does represent something. She represents kind of like the naive romanticism that you can kind of play along and no one questions.
You mean the poems that you write when you're 15 years old?
But I think that this is a real possibility for her. You know, if she does read and she does actually get up to speed, she could be a challenge, but she hasn't.
In the end, Greg Gutfeld doesn't need to destroy AOC with malice. Simply lifts the mirror and lets her reflection do the rest, because the real punchline isn't her tweets or her policies. It's that she genuinely believes she's changing the world when all she's doing is narrating it with dramatic flair and very little follow-through. And for a satirist like Gutfeld, that's not a threat, that's a gift that keeps on giving. And just when you think Greg Gutfeld's roast is done, he leans back in his chair, smirks, and digs even deeper. Because with AOC, there's always another layer of absurdity hiding just beneath the surface of the latest filtered selfie and virtue-laced soundbite. According to Greg Schemeners, every policy discussion as if it's a conspiracy designed specifically to confuse her hand somehow. The confusion becomes a form of protest. Schemenin engage she emotes. Schemenin solves she starts conversations. Which is code for throws a digital tantrum and then logs off before the grown-ups respond.
I like to say she's living in our heads like Pharrell Williams singing Happy, but in fact, it's the policies that live in our heads, and they should live there, because we know so many people who've been brutalized by such ideas. When you hear someone talk about socialism like it's a fun new way to pay down my college debt, you gotta scream. Just prepare to be called awful things for doing so. Today, pointing out the evil of the past makes you the bane of the...
Greg pounces on her now infamous habit of narrating her political life like she's starring in an off-Broadway tragedy about feelings. AOC doesn't debate policy. She gives monologues about her truth, and that truth is often so heavily edited. For maximum drama, Gutfeld says it feels less like governance and more like an experimental theater project funded by She spent 5 minutes condemning inequality, then spend the next 5 crafting a post about how the lighting in the Capitol is a metaphor for oppression. Then comes the fashion politics. Gutfeld rolls his eyes with delight at the way AOC weaponizes wardrobe like it's a constitutional amendment. The infamous tax, the rich dress, wasn't just a slogan, it was performance art, stitched in irony and dipped in hypocrisy. Here's a congresswoman who built her brand on class struggle, attending an elite gala where the ticket price alone could cover half a college semester, while wearing the message like a bumper sticker with a zipper. Greg likens it to showing up at a firefighters convention in a Let It Burn t-shirt, but he doesn't stop there. Gutfeld skewers her obsession with redefining every term in the English language. For AOC, nothing means what it used to. Borders are optional. Logic is offensive, and economics is a matter of emotional interpretation.
America. So by now you heard that AOC, among others, were arrested last night. She truly is an American hero. It was brutal. Taken out in cuffs. Well, technically, her shirt had cuffs. Maybe French cuffs, as she did surrender without...
In her world, wanting secure borders is xenophobia. Questioning trillion-dollar spending is cruelty. And asking basic questions is somehow an attack on her womanhood. It's less political debate and more word salad with a side of moral superiority. Greg also has a field day with her uncanny ability to turn any event, no matter how unrelated, into a moment about herself. A snowstorm, a Supreme Court decision, a banana shortage, it all somehow loops back to AOC's brand. She's like a walking commentary generator, absorbing headlines and converting them into paragraphs about justice, resistance, and occasionally, skincare. They swarm social media like digital bodyguards, ready to defend her every gaffe as genius, and every contradiction as bravery. It's not politics. It's a cult of personality powered by ring lights and Wi-Fi. So Gutfeld wraps it all up with that signature grin, the kind that tells you he's not angry, just entertained, because while AOC thinks she's rewriting history, Greg knows she's just providing the best political satire money could never